Wait a minute, what's going on here? This is Friday night on the Fandom Podcast Network. It's supposed to be Culture Clash Live. No, guys, we are doing something special tonight because we are having a special edition of our Marvel MCU podcast, True Believers Live, because Daredevil is back and we are incredibly excited about it. We are taking the deep dive into Hell's Kitchen tonight to talk about the first 2 episodes of Daredevil. We are incredibly excited for it. I've got a couple of great people here joining me, but before we get any further, this is a spoiler reaction show. We're going to be diving deep into the first 2 episodes. So, guys, spoilers ahead starting at this point. If you have not watched the first 2 episodes of Daredevil Born Again, go watch them, come back and join us, listen to us on our podcast version or watch this on YouTube. But let me get a couple of my legal eagle partners, my partners in my Marvel firm joining us. And of course, first and foremost is my co-founder here at the Fandom Podcast Network. We like to call him Foggy because he's always a little foggy anyway, but he is the one and only Mr. Kevin Reitzel.
What's going on? Back for some Daredevil. Check that out. I got the Netflix run right here on Blu-ray. Look at that. Woo.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yes.
8 years after season 3 ended, we are back in Hell's Kitchen.
How many years?
Like 8 years. It's a little bit crazy here, but
Jeez.
You know, if we're going to be talking Marvel, and somebody I know who maybe made some threats, and I don't trust him because he could be good with like a bullseye. Cat Cedar is here to talk everything Marvel, and he's especially excited to talk everything Daredevil.
Wait, that's the wrong catchphrase. Sorry. Let's do this.
Ghostbusters, quick response, you Hobson. Are you sure you want to be called Foggy, Kevin?
I know, right? What's up, Chris? Good to see you, buddy.
Well, guys, we are here to talk about something. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think for a while we'd ever see any more of it again, but Daredevil with Charlie Cox and the Netflix people are back with Daredevil Born Again. My excitement level for this has been sky high since they announced it. I am thrilled to have Daredevil back on my screen, and we're even more thrilled to talk about it here on True Believers on the Fandom Podcast Network. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. We're getting back into Hell's Kitchen, which, again, like I said, spoiler reaction show, guys. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. So hold on. It's going to be a wild ride here on the Fandom Podcast Network tonight with True Believers. So, 2, make sure you check out all the great stuff on the Fandom Podcast Network. And hey, we got a new logo with a QR code. Give that code a scan. It'll take you right to our audio podcast website. Take a listen to some show. Check out what we got going on here. Very excited about everything that is happening on the Fandom Podcast Network. But guys, I'm ready. I think it's time. We need to talk some Daredevil Born Again. So let's get things started and get into some of our fun phases, because that's what we do, because we are an MCU podcast. And guys, here up on our screen, if you're watching on our YouTube channel, you can see we got some of the early posters that have been popping up for Daredevil Born Again. Real quick, guys, before we get into the actual episodes too, I'm going to ask you, did you guys actually think we would get to this point where we have Daredevil back on Disney Plus of all things? Kevin, were you shocked when they made this announcement that they were bringing Daredevil back?
Kind of, sort of. I was surprised because I kind of feel at first that Disney was trying to take the whole Netflix series of characters that they wonderfully did over there and just kind of push them underneath the rug, because of course, we didn't know that they didn't really accept them in their timeline. They weren't really kind of mentioned, straight up, and I remember all those memes of the Defenders, like they were ready to come out, when everyone came out for Endgame, and there's that line in Endgame saying, "Is that everyone?" And then who was it that says, who else do you want? And there's that meme of the Defenders guys just waiting, like, "We're ready, guys. We're ready to come fight with you." And so you kind of got the feeling they were kind of like the other side of the family they didn't really want to acknowledge. So it was nice that they did. And Kyle, did you say too that they got people from the Netflix creators to continue this new version?
Yes,
right?
Actually, the showrunner and main director for this show is the gentleman who ran the Punisher show for Netflix.
Nice. Okay, well, that's good. So, what about you, Kat? What do you think? Were you surprised that the announcement came out that we were actually getting I guess kind of a continuation with Charlie Cox back.
I was psyched when they said that, and I was like, now they just got to give it to me. When are they going to give it to me? I think in every video I've been on with you guys, and when you were away in Australia, Kyle and I were talking like, is Daredevil coming out yet? Is Daredevil coming soon? When is Daredevil coming? We Kyle and I both have a love for Daredevil, and it's just like, give it to us already. Thank you. It's finally here.
They were very smart to realize what they had with Charlie Cox and that cast.
Absolutely.
We'll get into that a little bit more later, but recasting just with fans just wouldn't have been a good thing. And Charlie's just amazing, but that whole cast is amazing. So we'll get into that later.
Yep. So again, guys, Daredevil Born Again is here. Episode 1, Heaven's Half Hour. Episode 2, Optics. And Last Chance. We're about to start our talk on episode 1. Spoiler alert. After this point, if you listen and you get spoiled, it's on you, because we're going to have a lot of fun things to talk about. So let's get into it. Kevin, if you would kind of go through the slides while I read the things for episode 1, I would greatly appreciate it.
You got it, buddy.
So plot synopsis for episode 1, Heaven's Half Hour. After 8 years, we have Daredevil back. So while out celebrating their associate Cherry's retirement at Josie's, Matt Murdock, Foggy Nelson, and Karen Page, as well as other patrons, are attacked by Benjamin Dex Poindexter, now an assassin. You might know him as Bullseye. Foggy is severely injured in the attack and dies in Karen's arms, causing an enraged Matt as the masked vigilante Daredevil to drop Dex off a roof shortly after Cherry arrives on the roof and discovers Matt's secret identity. A year later, Matt, having retired as Daredevil, has partnered with former district attorney Kristen McDuffie. Karen has moved to San Francisco while Dex is given a life sentence for his crimes. Kristen sets Matt up on a date with therapist Helen Glenn, and the two hit it off. After gaining enough signatures and with his wife's Vanessa's support, Wilson Fisk decides to run for mayor of New York City, launching an anti-vigilante campaign. In a private chat, Fisk assures Matt he was not involved in Foggy's murder, as he kept his promise of not hurting Matt's friends. And Matt warns Fisk that he will retaliate if he steps out of line. Fisk responds by warning there will be consequences if Matt restarts his activities as Daredevil. On his second date with Heather, Matt learns that Fisk has won the election. While celebrating his victory, Fisk reveals to Vanessa he learned she cheated on him. Guys, this first episode came out and was just on fire. I want to also, to Ghostbusters' quick response to say what you want about Disney, but they're sticking with the darkness of the Netflix version. I give them a little credit. We're going to talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, buddy.
Kevin, I want to start with you because I know we're a fan of the Daredevil series, but because you haven't read the comics and haven't had that familiarity, you're looking at it strictly coming from the Netflix series.
Cat, stop shaking your head. Hold on. Cat's shaking his head. Stop it. Come on. You know I'm the MCU guy. I don't read the comics. Sorry, Cat.
So what was your first initial reaction to this first episode and getting back into this world?
It felt like Netflix season 3, just a little late. The feeling was it, and we'll get more into that, but it felt like a good transition. I thought that Disney did a good job of getting the feel, getting the look, and it kind of felt like coming home again. Because even though I never read the comics, and obviously I go to you and especially Kat, because he knows his stuff, and that was one of the things that Kat and I loved about Dragon Con was like, Kat was kind of like my nerd translator when it came to like obscure characters that he would see dressing up as cosplay. And he'd go, "Oh, I can't believe it's blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Who?" He's like, and he would explain. I go, "Oh, okay." So I learned a lot of that from Kat. You go back a long ways with that. But it was nice to feel that kind of comfortableness and then they kind of have the man or woman on the street interviewing people too, which I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, that I was impressed with it. I thought that overall the feel was just right.
Yeah, I thought they really nailed the feel. The opening act fight sequence between Daredevil and Bullseye too, right out of the gate. What a way to get this.
Chris didn't like it. He says he found it dragged on a little bit.
I can see that a little bit because it was because they're doing the one shot right out of the gate, but it was with the smoke in the room. It made it a little bit hard to make out some of what was going on. But
I was trying to count all the knives in Matt Murdock. I lost count.
Yeah. And the fact that Bullseye kind of bounced when he fell or was dropped. So, Kat, what about you? You and I have been raving about the return of Daredevil and so excited for about it. This first episode, your reactions.
I think whoever helped the directors film this episode went back and really watched the first, second, third season of Daredevil and like really like watched them, like what kind of stuff are you doing, and then said, "Hey, we need to be a little more darker, or we need to do this or that." They spot on nailed what I would consider the Netflix shows with the darkness and made it just so good. And that opening fight scene, oh my God, that was so good. Going up the stairs with the radio, or the people following the cameras, all in one shot. Oof, man.
That had kind of a Raid feel to it a little bit, you know?
That was so good, though.
Raid. Yeah.
Even showing them getting tired, like...
Yeah, I was getting tired with him. I was like, oh, man, can he go all the way to the top? Ugh.
Yeah. That was really good. The only thing I was a little weirded off is that if you listen to Daredevil when he uses his billy club, it sounds sort of like Spider-Man's whip. You know, when he shoots up into the air, and I'm like, that was kind of Spider-Man homage. Okay, I can go with that, I guess. Because I guess in the comics it does say thwip from time to time.
Yeah, they've used that effect. But guys, too, I mean, obviously getting just the show back and obviously seeing Matt Murdock and the Ram and what happens in the beginning, which really sets up the whole dynamic for this show with obviously the death of Foggy Nelson and the ramifications of that with Karen Page moving out to San Francisco, getting a whole new kind of cast around Matt Murdock. But we also have, of course, the return of the Kingpin. Now, we didn't see it's not been that long since we saw the return of the Kingpin in Echo. So there's a lot of follow-up to that, which we'll talk about later. But you have everything that's going on with Daredevil, but everything that's going on with the Kingpin in this episode, where making his decision to run for the mayor of New York was just as enthralling. And I think what I really liked about this first episode is you're seeing these two just bitter rivals coming in a totally different approach, culminating with their conversation they have in the diner. And guys, I think that was one of them for not being a superhero conflict per se. What a powerful and just intense moment. You could have cut the tension in that scene with a knife, Kevin.
You know what this scene reminded me of? Reminded me of that perfect scene between Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in Heat, when they finally meet and they have that cup of Heat, when they have that cup of coffee together, and they're basically just saying straight up, you know, this is what I'm about, and if you get in my way, I'm going to have to kill you, and that's in so many words. And that's I don't know if that was an homage to that scene, if they knew that filming this, but
it was.
Yeah, and as Chris says, Ghostbusters Quick Response Unit says, yes, that conversation was awesome writing.
There's a little snippet with Charlie Cox talking to some other reporters, and they mentioned this scene, and they said they did it to an homage to Heat, because that was such an impactful scene for Charlie Cox.
Yeah.
So that's why he wanted it done this way, because it was for him. And they did a great job. It was phenomenal. I mean, yeah.
That's good. That's good to hear, because it was obvious and definitely a good thing. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
One of the things I'll say about this episode, and I think it reflects in the second episode too, and I'm curious to what you guys think of this, is that even though we have that amazing opening action scene, there's really not a lot of superhero fight action in these first two episodes. But the character stories they are telling in these first two episodes are so intense and pulling you in and with intrigue. And I felt like I really didn't necessarily miss the action per se. As both of these episodes, they had a couple of fight scenes, but they were more building up to what's going on. And I'm curious, actually, I want to start with you on this. Did you feel that, and just the intrigue they're building, even though you and I, as comic fans, know aspects of the story, it's still amazing absolutely. How they're playing it out.
I love the opening fight scene. It was phenomenal, everything they've done. And then the whole building up of Matt, what happened, his whole, you know, the other people trying to get him to go back out and date, meet people, talk to people. And then the second episode, building up with the Kingpin and everything he's going through, and the mayor and Vanessa and all that's going through with all of that. And then, of course, to the final fight scene at the end of that one. Personally, I would love to see an all-action episode, but man, these two were just like, wow, those were good.
Yeah. I agree with Ghostbusters quick response unit 2. There was plenty of brain action. There's a lot that makes you think in this, Kevin, and
Absolutely.
it's a credit to Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio for being phenomenal actors, and the entire cast, but those two especially, they just pull you into these characters. They are these characters without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's save that discussion right now. Let's get into the cast here, guys.
Okay.
Go
ahead, Kevin.
Well, go ahead. My answer was going to be in the cast and crew comments and observations, because I think it's time for that, and I don't think it's a big surprise here. You know the saying when it comes to good guys and bad guys fighting, villains and heroes, that your hero, it's not as good unless you have a good villain. That saying. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but
your hero is only as good as your villain.
Yeah, there you go, Kat. I think Vincent D'Onofrio was born to play this character of the Kingpin, Fisk. He is freaking awesome as this character, and the fact that we've got to see him in it's more than just Daredevil series 2. I can't see anyone else playing him. It's funny too, because like everyone will say, well, he was the original Thor. And that's a Adventures in Babysitting joke, in case you guys didn't get that. And I remember the first movie I ever saw him in was in Full Metal Jacket too. But he is just if he's not good in this series, if you don't have him, I don't know if this show is as good as it is, because he steals every scene that he's in. He's someone you fear, and he's a very, very powerful man, and he plays it so well. I just got to give huge props to Vincent D'Onofrio as Wilson Fisk. He's just one of my favorite villains in the MCU.
One thing I want to add to that: people ask me, how do you intimidate somebody without physical violence? I tell them, watch the Kingpin on Daredevil. Yeah. That's how you intimidate somebody without violence. Yeah. He is spot on. He has that genocide quad, like, I'm going to talk to you, and then I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. You're like, okay, I believe you.
Well, I think the other thing too, and before we get into episode 2, is this show went through a lot of trials and tribulations before it actually happened. It was actually rewritten. They actually brought back a lot of the people from the Netflix world to make this show after the first, and they went back and refilmed a lot of things, including bringing back several other key cast members with this, and it was the right decision. And I think,
should we talk about that now, or we'll want to wait on that?
We'll get into that a little bit more in something I have coming up, but I just wanted to put that out there for something to talk about. But Kevin, I think it's time we talk a little bit about episode 2. Would you care to give us the plot synopsis for episode 2, Optics?
Yeah, please. Okay, I'll let you get the slides there, Kyle. So episode 2, Optics. Matt decides to represent Hector Ayala, who assaulted a dirty cop while trying to help Nikki Torres before the cop was accidentally killed by a train. With Cheryl's help, Matt discovers Hector is the vigilante White Tiger who took justice into his own hands after Daredevil's appearance. While attempting to improve his optics in the first days of his office, Fisk learns that Ben Ulrich's niece, young journalist Bibi, the New York Police Department Commissioner Gallo, is poised to resign in protest of poor conditions. Fisk threatens Gallo's family to force him back into office. To deal with the pressures of the press, he and Vanessa start attending couples therapy with Heather as their therapist. Matt tracks down Torres and helps him escape by fighting off corrupt cops.
Yeah.
So do we know if he straight up killed those corrupt cops? Because he looks like
they're at least in traction for a while. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So,
but I think one of the whole fascinating things about this episode, obviously we kind of start getting a little bit more with the White Tiger and everything like that. But seeing something that Matt, especially at the end of the episode, that Fisk actually calls Matt on in that conversation, how much Matt liked the violence. And I think you see that in the end of this episode when he takes out those cops. That primal scream he has is because he's upset because he enjoyed it, and he let loose and he enjoyed it. And I think that's why you have this primal scream because he's kept it bottled up this whole time. Not being Daredevil after the tragedy, and it's so much a part of him. And I think that's one of the great things that happened in this episode. And obviously, just watching the Kingpin work as the mayor already is just amazing to watch, Kevin.
Yeah. It was good to see him. He doesn't seem quite comfortable, which I thought was interesting. And then he's asking about the desk, but then he realizes, and he's getting counseled about why it's important. That's why this episode is called Optics, because in front of the camera, he has to present a certain thing. Like, the whole pothole scene was very important for him to, gain some favor from people. But what I found really interesting, and I'm glad that they touched on it, was that the cops aren't having it. They know he's dirty. They know a horrible person that he is. And so that's why he has to go into the threatening and the blackmail and stuff like that. But and his wife too, I thought was a really good touch to this scene. Since she's been kind of like carrying on the underworld without him, I guess. So yeah.
I love that scene actually in the first episode too that you remind me of, and I just want to bring up when she's running the meeting and he shows up and like everybody just like flees the room as fast as they can. But I think that was good. Kat, what about you? What were your thoughts on episode 2?
I loved it, dude. Again, I'm more of a give me a little more action, but the whole build up for Wilson Fisk and where he was going and what he wanted to do, becoming the mayor of New York was just great. The scenes with him and his wife and, talking and then, being in being in counseling. And of course, Hector Ayala being on trial for killing the 2 dirty cops, and then Daredevil finding out who he was, and then also still continuing to represent him and just going forward. I mean, again, like I said, I'm more of an action guy, but man, that was a great, mind-blowing episode. I'd love to watch for the 3rd time.
You really felt the tension in
like
all of these scenes. It was just like, whoa.
Yeah, they did it. Like I said, they're doing a phenomenal. Whoever's the guy who was watching episodes season 1, 2, and 3, and saying, "Hey, no, it was this and this and that, and hey, do this a little like that, and bring this out a little more." That guy needs an award. That guy is doing an amazing. Well, that team is doing an amazing job, keeping it so spot on and like you like just drawn and you're like, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next?
Yeah.
What's gonna happen next?
One of the things too, and Kevin, I'm especially wanting your take on this. When we have that fight scene at the beginning where Hector gets himself involved because he thinks just 2 guys are bullying the one guy. You know what's going to happen in that, but they still play it out so well when the guy gets hit by the subway. Even though it's we watched enough movies and TV shows, we know this is going to happen. There's still a shocking element to it, just because it's like, it happened that quick. And I thought it's one of the things about the fight choreography in that scene and on this show.
Yeah, because at first when I was watching, I was kind of figuring, okay, these guys are definitely bullying this one dude, and I didn't really know who Hector was at first until things started, coming to fruition. But it was a very impactful scene because when fights, I've seen enough movies in, where you have a subway going on to where stuff's going to go down, people are going to die, to whether, you got a subway explosion in the Die Hard movie, or, you got John Wick shootouts and, stuff like that stuff happening. Nothing good's going to happen. So the tension was great. It's just it's always a great setting for some type of bad thing to happen is in subways. So yeah.
Kat, what about you as far as that particular scene goes and the fight choreography with that? They played it off so good. And like I said, even though an outcome was predictable, it still was shocking.
Oh yeah, you get blown away. I mean, the fight, like, okay, are these really just scum of the earth criminals messing with this poor woman, or messing with this poor guy, or is it something else? And then, the one cop goes flying off the rails, and then the subway just boom. You're like, oh shit, that just happened. Okay, I knew it was gonna happen, but wow, that was very fluid. And to also mention the whole sequence, all the fights, aren't they done by the choreography group that did Punisher in the first season of Daredevil as well? I think it is. Yeah, that's why it's so fluid. Because those guys are amazing. They know what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to do a little phase shift here because we got a little Marvel trivia about Daredevil Born Again. Yeah, that's right. Gotta give a little credit here to Kevin and everybody here. We dug in and got a little Marvel trivia here for Daredevil Born Again, and there's some interesting pieces out here. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Some of the things that happened with this show and behind the scenes, and how there was a lot of changes that happened, including bringing back some key cast members. Netflix series leads Deborah Ann Wall and Eldon Henson, who played Karen Page and Foggy Nelson, respectively, were not originally confirmed to be part of Born Again, with Wall claiming on Twitter she had not been contacted by Marvel one way or the other. Following the creative overhaul, they were both set to reprise their roles along with Wilson Bethel as antagonist Benjamin Bullseye Poindexter. And I just want to throw this out there. There's a great little clip of Charlie Cox talking about when he found out that they were bringing them back, because they have a friends group chat, and he talks about as soon as he heard, he had to go to like the Marvel rep on set, said, can I tell them now? Can I tell them now? And he talks about texting them to tell them that they were coming back, and it's just the excitement and energy he has in that. If you can find that clip, it's a really great clip. But Kevin, would you mind diving into trivia part 2 there?
Okay, we're going to talk about Foggy later, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Foggy a little later.
All right, cool. All right. The show originally went into production with Matt Corman and Chris Ord attached as head writers and executive producers. The show was planned to be a soft reboot of the Netflix Daredevil series with a comparatively lighter tone and an episodic structure. 6 of the 18 episodes were shot prior to executives reviewing the footage and feeling the series, quote, wasn't working. In September of 2023, the show was announced to be getting a creative relaunch with Corman, Ord, and the original directors being let go. Eduardo Scardapane, a writer from Netflix of Punisher, and then hired as a new showrunner. Moon Knight and Loki Season 2 directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead were then hired to direct the remaining episodes. Some of the previous work is planned to be retooled to fit the new serialized structure, hearkening to the Netflix series' darker tone and established storylines. The new pilot episode and 2 additional episodes for the first half were also written to better establish the new direction.
Well, that's not the only trivia when it comes to making things happen with this show, because I find this very interesting, and I'm so glad that it worked out this way for several reasons. But Sandrine Holt was set to replace Eilert Zurer as Vanessa Fisk during the initial version of Born Again. However, fan criticism over the recasting and the show's creative overhaul led to Zurer returning to the role. And I'm just going to say this, no offense to Sandrine Holt, but Eilert Zurer is Vanessa Fisk, and the presence she has on screen and her performance with Vincent D'Onofrio is outstanding. And what the chemistry between those two, Kevin, is mind-blowing.
Yeah, I didn't remember that it was the same actress, but man, she fit right in there. I thought it was great.
Yeah. Kat, I'll give you a chance to weigh on this, because I know you know a lot about the history of Vanessa, and bringing back the original actress, it was the right call.
100%. It's like making something, you make a movie, you make a sequel, you add the same characters. Even if it is 8 years later, you got to have the same characters. A little de-aging maybe, but you got to have. You can't have somebody else, because then it's like, man, they brought in that person instead. Or it sort of just pulls you out a little bit.
Yeah, it does. But we got a little bit of trivia here for episode 2, Optics. Kevin, you want to hit us with the first piece of trivia from episode 2?
Yes, Heather Glenn's book is titled Live Without Fear. The subtitle of the Daredevil comic book is The Man Without Fear.
Yeah. The next piece of trivia here is Fisk wonders how old the desk in the mayor's office is, and specifically wonders if Fiora LaGuardia ever sat behind it, saying he was the only man his father admired. Guardia represented New York in the House of Representatives from 1923 to 1933, but he's by far best known for serving as the 99th mayor of New York City from 1934 to 1946. Guardia was known for his energetic and charismatic personality, and as an ideological Republican socialist, he was known for working well with other political parties and was endorsed by a number of Democrats when running for mayor. His legacy included leading the city during both the Great Depression and World War II, unifying public transit and making it citywide, creating projects to expand public housing, playgrounds, parks, and airports, and reinstalling merit-based promotions within the city government. Guys, I think Wilson Fisk has a lot of ways to go before we get him to be as good as Mr. Guardia there. But
well, I'm guessing too that means that's how the New York airport was named after, was LaGuardia. I never knew that, so that's cool.
Yeah. Kevin, we got one more piece of trivia for episode 2 here.
Yes. Cherry, who is Matt's private investigator, is a retired NYPD detective. Cherry is played by actor Clark Johnson, who's best known for his role as a police officer when he played Detective Meldrick Lewis, a homicide detective with the Baltimore City Police Department on the series Homicide: Life on the Street, which is part of the Law and Order 1990 universe.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting things there. But guys, too, we have some trivia, but we also have some Marvel Easter eggs, and there were some fun ones from Daredevil. And first up and foremost is return of a familiar face and kind of an old friend for the Daredevil series and the fans of the Defender, and that is Josie's Bar. Josie's Bar was the frequent hangout spot of the trio of Nelson, Murdock, and Page. We see it again here, run by Josie herself, who was played by Susan Varon, shortly before things go very badly for Foggy. Kat, I just want to bring you in for just a second because Josie's Bar is such a huge part of Daredevil lore.
Not only that, but it's also a huge part for the Defenders, Iron Fist and Power Man, and Jessica Jones, too. They've all encountered Josie's Bar in their comics. It's a well-established location on 51st and 3rd, I think is the address.
Yeah, I think so. I'm just wondering if she has to carry very expensive superhero insurance.
I'm sure she's well taken care of by the superheroes that will break windows, break doors, break walls, break everything else. I'm sure she gets refunded pretty quickly at some point in time.
Yeah. Chris, jumping in real quick, I'm glad we were talking about White Tiger. I'm glad they didn't reveal his secret identity until later. It made the subway fight less predictable. That's a good point.
Good call. Sure
get that. Another fun Easter egg is actually a little reference to a previous Disney Plus show, because Matt, the Kingpin, references Echo. Matt and Wilson sit down for a catch up while talking about family. Fisk notes, "I tried to mentor someone. Well, that's the closest I've come." He is, of course, talking about Echo here in reference to her Disney Plus show. Matt can't help but snipe back, "Didn't she try to shoot you in the face?" So I love the tie-ins there, and I think that the Echo aspect of it was very important to tie that into this show. But also too, and this was the big one that I think most everybody noticed, but it's still one of the most fun ones. Fisk on vigilantes. We don't need a gun-toting vigilante who wears a skull on his chest, or a man who dresses in a spider outfit, or a guy who wears devil horns. These are very clearly references to Punisher, Spider-Man, and Daredevil. And guys, the fact that we have the Spider-Man mention is, I think, a very big thing to pay attention to, because there's a lot of rumors that Spider-Man 4, D'Onofrio will be back as the mayor of New York and be a thorn in Spider-Man's side, which, Kevin, I love the fact they're even just throwing that little reference out there.
Yeah, Chris in the chat loves that too. Love the Spidey reference. And I think for fans, it was a good idea to let them know, yes, we're in the same universe. We got to mention the big name. So yeah.
Yeah. Kat, I know you. I saw you shaking your head. Let you get a quick thought in on the Spidey reference.
Oh, that was so awesome. I'm glad they did it, and it reminded me of when Daredevil appeared in Spider-Man, and now Spider-Man's quote unquote appearing by name, at least, in Daredevil. So it was a great little nod. Also, the fact that Kingpin hates both of them in the comics too, but that's something else.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing. But guys, too, next up, we White Tiger. Now we see in this episode where we find the White Tiger's Daredevil finds the White Tiger suit. Matt makes a passing reference to White Tiger having mystical amulets. These are the Jade Tiger amulets, which originated in Iron Fist's heavenly city of Kunlu, which grant Hector superhuman agility and strength. So there's a little bit more history to White Tiger here. I think this is a good time to have a quick discussion about this character. This is actually a long-standing Marvel character. He was a big part of Daredevil, a big part of Iron Fist, Heroes for Hire. We've seen him in Spider-Man. What's interesting about this character, and we have the comic version up against the TV show here on our YouTube broadcast right now, it's the Jade Amulet that gives White Tiger his enhanced powers, more strength, endurance, recovery, a little bit of extra speed. But in the comics, one of the interesting things about this is the amulet is like a drug. It becomes highly addictive to the user. And at one point, they actually broke up the 3 pieces of the amulet and gave it to different people because to avoid that. But in recent years, they brought the amulet back together. And the current White Tiger in the actual Marvel comics is Hector Ayala's sister, because in the comics, Hector is killed in the comics. So, but there is a long lineage of the White Tiger within the Marvel comics. Kat, I know you probably got some knowledge on this as well.
Oh yeah, 1973 I think it was when he first debuted. Hector, yeah, great character. Like most characters when they first appeared, he was not thought who he was. Like, oh, he's a villain. Quick, we got to stop him. And realizing, oh wait, no, he's actually a hero. He's helping. Hang on a minute. And like you said, yeah, they did break up the amulets for the fact that it was, I don't know if it was like a drug or like a curse that makes them start going a little insane and things going wrong. And then that's why they broke it up. And then, as you said, his sister is now in possession of all 3. And knock on wood, she is not having any issues. And let's hope it stays that way, because it's a cool concept for a character with White Tiger, with everything that they can do. And like I said, intense strength, speed, endurance.
Yeah.
All that. Just I like White Tiger. I think he's a pretty cool character, personally.
Kevin, I do want to get what your initial impressions were of this character from what we saw in episode 2.
I love seeing another vigilante on the streets. I think it's great. And I had no idea who White Tiger was. The only White Tiger I was familiar with was the mid-90s film starring Gary Daniels, action film right here that I think our own Lethal Mullet himself has covered on the channel. And this is directed by friend of the network, Richard Martin, who we've had on the show twice for our Bloody Kings Highlander podcast, because he directed many episodes of the Highlander TV series, and that was one of the feature films that he directed. And so that was the only White Tiger I knew. But it was nice to see, back to Daredevil, it was nice to see another in-universe vigilante that is helping to clean up the streets.
Well, speaking of in-universe vigilantes, we all know John Barenthal is returning as the Punisher in this show, but if you paid attention in the final fight scene in episode 2, an obvious one to finish off the episode, but one of the cops that tries to kill Nikki Torres, the key witness in Hector Ayala's trial, is sporting an adapted Punisher tattoo. It is not like Frank Castle to work with the police. So are these cops who have taken on some of the Punisher's lethal methods? So we're already starting to get a little...
Hold on, are we talking about Punisher groupies here? What are we talking about?
That's the question. That's what we got to find out here, Kevin. So, okay. But they're already laying Punisher groundwork here, guys. So, getting excited. I can't wait for John Barenthal to return as the character.
I don't think he would like dirty cops, because those are dirty cops.
Yeah, well, and again, maybe they're just, like they said, are they taking on the Punisher, some of the Punisher's lethal methods, and maybe using that. So it's going to be interesting to see. But guys, this is True Believers, Daredevil Born Again, and we're going to move into phase 3 and talk about some of the key plot points for us. So, guys, this is phase 3. This is where we're going to kind of hit some of our key plot points here, and I've picked out a few things here that I think are pretty important. But topic 1, and we've mentioned this a few times, and this has been on a lot of the different reviews for this show, is it's 7 years after the end of season 3 of Daredevil on Netflix, now back with Born Again. One of the big things a lot of people are talking about is how it feels like we're right back into the Netflix show. And again, we've talked about this through the episode. Disney and the Marvel Studios made a conceited effort to do a lot of changes after they saw this. Bring in a lot of people who were tied in with the Netflix universe of the MCU. And I got to be honest with you guys, it really felt seamless going from Netflix into Disney Plus, and to see Disney also embrace a show that is very violent and very intense as these first 2 episodes were. I think they did a phenomenal job of keeping us within that Netflix universe of Daredevil, but still having it be now truly a part of the MCU, Kevin.
Yeah, it was seamless in my opinion. I was debating whether or not to use that word seamless or not, but it definitely felt that way. It's the Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio stepped right in, and then of course we got his lawyer friends in the beginning as well, in reference to Bullseye. It was just felt it. I know it's been 8 years, since it originally started, whatever it ended, but it was seamless, and I was very happy about that. The feel, the darkness, as super as we've seen a lot of our heroes in the MCU be, it's nice to know that no matter how super or how powerful they are, there's still crime down in America that on Earth that they can't always deal with, and it's nice to it makes the show feel grounded too, so to speak.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly, and I love the street. That's one of the things I loved about Daredevil was the street levelness of it. Kat, what about you? How are you feeling as far as transitioning from Netflix to this?
It was like just a step off a curb and continue on walking. They did an amazing job, and continuing with this amazing job in episode 2. Just keep it going. They're doing, it's like, nothing, like 8 years? Nah, it's only been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Well, topic 2, guys. This is a big thing because I think it's a key point of the story of Born Again, but it was also a big moment in Marvel Comics as well, as Wilson Fisk becoming the mayor of New York. And I've got a little bit of history on the comic book side of that. For a brief time, Wilson Fisk was the mayor of New York City in the Marvel Universe. And even though he's since retired from both politics and crime, and more recently unretired from the latter, the impact he had on Marvel's New York City is still being felt even into the term of Marvel's current New York mayor, the one and only Luke Cage. So what happened when the Kingpin was the mayor of New York City, and how does it tie into his recent comic book return? In about 2017, the Marvel Universe was recovering from an all-out war with Hydra in the story's Secret Empire, which led to massive political upheaval all over Marvel Comics version of the United States. Wilson Fisk uses his considerable resources to help people who are trapped in New York City after a Hydra attack, parlaying the turmoil into a last-minute candidacy for mayor. After refusing to acknowledge his well-known criminal past, Fisk is elected, though it is later revealed he fixed the vote. In an interesting twist in this storyline, however, Matt Murdock gains the position of deputy mayor with the intent of monitoring his old arch-enemy's activities in office. This begins a long game of cat and mouse in which Murdock eventually catches Fisk meeting with New York's crime lords, resulting in Kingpin temporarily being removed from office. This in turn leads to Matt Murdock to take over Kingpin's place as mayor, with Matt serving a brief term until Kingpin's return, which results in a temporary truce between the two for the good of the city. The Kingpin as mayor of New York was quite interesting and had the heroes in the in Marvel Comics on their toes. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how long this plays out, because I think it's going on beyond Daredevil Born Again. But they hinted at this in Echo at the end of Echo, Kevin, and they made it reality in this Daredevil series. And I think it's just a brilliant thing to do with this character.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming because I wasn't familiar with the comics, which is one of the advantages that I like to have, is this stuff catches me by good surprise. And I thought that was really cool that he is trying to, he's not really turning over a new leaf, but that to have someone as powerful as him hold a powerful position like that makes him even scarier. And I love that this came from the comics. I'm glad that the comics did something like this first. And I can only imagine as a fan, like, you, Kyle, and you, Kat, going through those comics, realizing, holy crap, Kingpin is mayor of New York. Oh my God, what kind of shenanigans are going to happen now? So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward.
Now, Kat, as the comics guy like me, obviously they can't follow this story like they specifically like the comics. But
Whoa. Why?
There's
too many issues.
There's issues. There's characters who are involved that aren't necessarily back officially into this world yet. So we got to see.
You just can't leave that hanging out there like that without explaining why. I mean, come on.
It would take too long to try to explain it, but in the short term, the characters that have not been invited into the MCU yet, Luke Cage, Power Man, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones, all the villains who aren't here yet, all have a huge thing with Kingpin being mayor, as well as Spider-Man, Punisher, the Avengers. So it'd be a big crossover. It'd be that big. Is that everybody? And Doctor Strange going, what, you wanted more?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, go back to that.
Gotcha.
But like I said, there are a lot of rumors that this storyline could continue after Daredevil Born Again into Spider-Man 4, which I really hope ends up being the case. But Kat,
that'd be a smart move.
Yeah. Kat, well, the one thing I felt like was they really have at least captured the spirit of the reaction and the feeling of when we found out Wilson Fisk was mayor in the comics, and they brought it into this storyline.
Oh, yeah. No, I think it's great that they did this. I hope it does go all the way through the entire Daredevil season. I hope it goes into the Spider-Man movie. And I hope it goes all the way through Secret Invasion, or at least into or through Secret Invasion. Because then that would sort of tie us in with the comic books and almost get us to what year it is in comics, caught up to what year we are in the universe, which would be a nice little tie-up, and then sort of fix some of the issues that they've mentioned in the past and tie everything in.
Yeah, I agree with that too. But I want to move on to the next topic because I think this is important. Well, we mentioned this earlier. They weren't a part of the original cast for Born Again, but after all the reworkings, we do see the return of both Foggy Nelson and Karen Page in the first episode, only to see them be written out of the show for now in the first episode. This also made way for some new characters such as Heather Glenn, Matt's new love interest, Bebe Ulrich picking up her Uncle Ben's legacy, and Kristen McDuffie, Matt's new law partner, who was the former DA. So here's the question. These two characters were so beloved, but was it the right call to have them there for everybody to get that tie-in, but to pave the way for these new characters to come in because of the being born again in the direction Daredevil's taking and bringing in these new faces? And I think it helps advance the story as much as I wish they would have done something a little different so they could bring Foggy back. And we're talking comic book movies. It's much like comic books. Just because the character's dead doesn't mean they stay dead. But I do think this was the right call to have them back, get that moment with them, and then move forward. Kevin, what about you? What did you feel about how?
Yeah, it was crucial, and whoever made the decision to change that and bring them in for this it was very important because the outside of Kingpin and Daredevil in the series, the two most important people were Foggy Nelson and Karen Page. You had to have them represented. You had to have them come back, and to kind of bridge into the because we get when we see them, it's a flashback basically, and then we see what happens to Foggy, him getting shot and killed by Bullseye. That kind of then sets up the tone of not only of the show's still dark, it's still violent, but also the tone that Daredevil carries in a year later, and how he's feeling with certain sort of way about this, and also being the prosecutor against Bullseye and stuff like that. So yeah, it was definitely the right thing to do.
And real quick, Kevin, and I'll ask Kat, get Kat's opinion on it. What about the new characters? Was there any of these new characters that they introduced that intrigued you?
It's still a little too soon. I am curious about them, but I need to see them. I need to see the character grow a little bit and go forward. So that's a wait and see for me right now.
I think for me, I am kind of interested about Bebe Ulrich because I think they're setting her up to be a really thorn in the Kingpin's side, and we'll see how that plays out. But Kat, what about you? The fact that they bring them back, write them out, and then what are your thoughts on some of these new characters?
Well, like Kevin said, you have to have had them in the episode. If you didn't, it probably wouldn't have worked as well as it did. And then having Foggy killed and then Kieran leaving, totally fine, but it also gives Kevin, hey Kevin, talking about you, man, gives Daredevil, like you were saying, that born again experience, why he quit being Daredevil because of what happened to Foggy, his best friend for many, many, many years, all the way through college. He's been with him since everything that ever happened to him with Karen in the comics and whatnot. And that's for Karen coming back. They can follow the Hell's Kitchen arc. That would be awesome. I'd love to see that, but that might be something later. However, the new character, I like his new love interest because she was actually a character in, I think, like 92 or 93 or something like that. That was his love interest for a few years in comics. BB, I agree with you, Kyle. Totally going to be a thorn in Kingpin side, 100%. And then everyone else is like giving them a little pits and hits, and we'll see where they go from there. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I love it. It's really cool. But yeah, they started off good, like I said, and just continuing down that road.
Yeah. The last time.
Yeah. Well, no, we're not moving on from Foggy yet. We need to talk about Foggy here. Okay.
Okay. So.
Okay. Can we talk about Foggy now?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I was gonna go ahead.
I don't want to brush this aside. This is a big deal. They killed off Foggy, and Ghostbusters Quick Response Unit said, "I hope there'll be Foggy flashbacks." This was big. They killed off a main character, and I have questions, guys. This is interesting because obviously we get the flashback in the beginning. They're together. We didn't know it was a flashback, and that alone there was a kind of a surprise for me too. And you bring back two of the most important allies that co-starred throughout the original Netflix series, and you kill one of them off. That's a big deal. But I got questions. Not only is Foggy dead, you got Bullseye. Why did Bullseye kill him?
I think in Bullseye's case, it was probably revenge factor.
For what?
For events that happened to him. He's a trained assassin. I think that maybe that's still one of the questions: is who hired Bullseye? I mean, Bullseye does have a history with Daredevil, so
and Kingpin.
Yeah, well, that was one thing. I was a little confused why you didn't see the little bullseye symbol like we did, in the Daredevil movie.
It was on his glove. If you notice his glove when he was reaching him, the back of his glove had that symbol on it.
Oh, I did not notice that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean that I hope that doesn't get swept under the rug. Why was he assassinated? Why wasn't Karen killed? Why isn't he taking it all out on Daredevil or Matt himself? He could have shot Matt, but he didn't.
Well, he was coming. If you watch when he's coming forward, he was talking to Karen when he met her the first time, and he was going to shoot her and kill her. But that's when Daredevil obviously kicked him through the window, and they had a big fight scene. But no, my guess is that Kingpin hired him to have Daredevil get broken. That's the whole arc for Born Again. Like kill all three of them if you can, but kill his best friend first,
right?
Then his other friend.
It's like killing his family, basically.
Exactly, killing like what happened to Punisher. They killed his family,
right?
And that's why he became who he was. So
yeah,
I think that's why they didn't.
That was a shock to me, as
the shock to me too.
Opening up this series, you're going to bring these two guys back, But what's weird though is when they started that scene, I'm like, this is too happy. Something's bad. Something's going to go bad. And sure enough, bloody too. That's not a PG. That's not a PG TV series for sure.
No, and that's again the third time that Karen's been in the line of fire and blood splattered all over her from the first two seasons.
Well, and of course, the other thing, if you're a fan of Daredevil, you know one thing: Daredevil can never be happy.
Nope.
Daredevil is a very tragic character in the comics. There is nothing good that lasts for Matt Murdock, and it's I'll be curious to see, because I don't think it's necessarily Kingpin who may have put the hit out on Foggy. It might have been Vanessa, and so I'm curious to see how this is going to play out. I don't think it's something that's going to get swept under the rug, Kevin, because they make too much of a point of showing him constantly picking up the Braille picture from obviously Foggy's funeral, that card, and he picks it up and carries with him everywhere. So I think we're not done with that storyline.
I did want to mention another character. Michael Gandolfini plays Daniel Blake. He's basically the new, I guess, assistant, and his father's James Gandolfini, of course, from Sopranos. Is he a character that was comic book mentioned? Because he seems to be kissing Kingpin's ass big time.
Character for the show.
Okay, I was wondering about that.
So, with that, too, guys, you mentioned, and Foggy's death obviously is a big aspect of the born again side for Matt Murdock, and this is the final topic I want to get into as far as plot points. Not only does the aspect of born again reflect Matt Murdock and Daredevil, I think it really does affect Kingpin and Wilson Fisk, at least in the start of this series, who's returning with a new view after all what happened to him in Echo, getting shot in the face, as well as trying to make his own marriage work with Vanessa and the struggles they're having because of she's kind of felt like he abandoned her when he went to go do what he did with Echo and the things that happened in there. Kingpin having to give up his life of crime, being a crime boss to be mayor of New York City, but we see he maybe can't separate the two as much as he would like to be able to. But I think in a way, it's Wilson Fisk trying to become something different, but still have that power. And in a way, I think the born again thing represents that Kingpin and Murdock are two sides of the same coin, and they're both, at least as the start of the series goes, they're both going something that you're trying to become born again as something else. The question is, can either of them succeed at it? What do you guys think about my view on this, and were you picking up those kind of vibes, Kevin?
Definitely. It's I feel like they centered that around more with the Kingpin character because of what happened to him. But I almost feel like his heat moment, the meeting for coffee with Matt, kind of like reminded him, like, you know what? Yeah, I'm trying to turn over a new leaf, but my born again is more of just trying to gain more power now with the position of mayor, and then he slides right back into it, when he, threatens in a very subtle way to keep the police commissioner or the police guy to stay while he, surreptitiously shows the picture of his family while he's eating that sandwich,
Which he hated.
Yeah. So yeah, because we get the flashback a year later after Foggy's death, you can definitely feel that Matt is trying to be born again as well. But it's also just a clever marketing way to let Disney know and Marvel Studios know that this is a different version, yet similar Netflix series or version of the Netflix series. We're going to have the same characters, the same feel, but we're going to start writing it to where, in a way, it's born again and it fits in with the current MCU timeline.
Kat, what about you? Were you picking up these vibes?
100%. D'Onofrio's Kingpin being born again from everything that happened to him with Echo, and then going blind and coming back, and then decided he sees Vanessa running the business, and he's like, okay, I can do this now. And then, of course, being Kingpin, you got to be a gangster. I'm sorry, you can't have that name and not be a crime boss somewhere sometime and continue doing that. And then, of course, Daredevil losing his best friend again, like I've said, and him being born again. I've given up being Daredevil. But you made a point when he was fighting the cops, that his scream was because he enjoyed it. I think it was more that he did that scream because he realizes that they need him to be Daredevil, and he doesn't want to do it yet. Instead of being a scream of, yes, I like this, it's more like, shit, I have to do this because there's no one else going to do it.
I got to give it to Chris here. Kevin, he weighed in. He's got a great point.
Yeah, he says, Chris says, I'm a born and bred Jersey boy, but even I know the best cheesesteaks are in Philly. And I am not going to argue that point because I've actually been to Philly. I've had their famous cheesesteaks, more than one, and damn, they're good.
Yeah, I've actually been there too. And the best Philly's cheesesteak was the one that's in front of the museums in those little carts. Those were the best places to get them. Don't go to a restaurant and get a chilled Philly cheesesteak. Go to the carts. So good. So juicy.
Real quick, too, Kevin, I want to get your thought on one other thing. We just had it happen in Captain America, New World Order, Brave New World Order.
Brave New World.
Too many worlds.
Brave New World.
Brave New World. We have talked on this show about how great Marvel is at making other shows relevant when maybe they were considered a little lower. They just did it with Incredible Hulk. Has Daredevil Born Again done that with Echo, at least with the Kingpin, having to go back and at least watch the Kingpin aspect storylines of what happened with him and Echo and how it leads into this character in Born Again?
No, sorry.
Cat?
I'm going back to watch Echo. I'm going to finish this, and then because I'm going to be gone for 3 weeks, physically being removed, I'm going to watch all the Daredevils, all the Punishers, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, and yes, Echo.
Yeah. Well,
it makes me want to go back. It makes me want to go back and watch a Netflix series for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, okay, guys, we're going to close it out in our final phase. Okay, guys, we are kicking things off here with Daredevil Born Again, but that doesn't mean we don't have some thoughts of what might be coming. So, guys, just real quick, I want to get your final thoughts on these first 2 episodes and maybe some predictions of what you think might be coming or directions that we might see in this first season of Daredevil Born Again. Kat, I actually want to start with you on this.
I'm besides keeping it the way they've been going, which is phenomenal, I'm hoping that somewhere in the early scenes, maybe episode 4, maybe episode 5, we have that flashback episode that you'd love to do, but give us Foggy in that episode and what Daredevil was doing during the time when Foggy was dead. And when Giuseppe died, what made him decide to not be Daredevil, besides, of course, Foggy passing away. And then the other characters, what they were doing to give us sort of like some ideas, maybe also answering the question of, oh, I hired Bullseye to kill Foggy. To answer Kevin's, like, oh, why was he killed? Why was he hired? Give us one of those flashbacks so that we get our Foggy, we get our Karen, we get our Daredevil. And then the rest of the episode is just Daredevil keeping an eye on the Kingpin, having some goons. I'd love to see some more Hector, and Punisher when he comes. Going to just be, I got a feeling going to be some intensely violent episodes with those 3, and then wrapping it up for the season. With a nice good fight between maybe him and Kingpin again.
Kevin, what about you? What final thoughts on these first 2 episodes and anything predictions or things you might hope you might see through the first season of this?
Yeah, great setup, a lot of drama, mixed with some good action. But I gotta tell you, I could watch Kingpin and Daredevil across the table again. That scene was just great. But looking forward, though, the thing that keeps, and I touched on it, the whole thing with Bullseye, I find very fascinating because so he doesn't get killed, he's put on trial. And there's a certain thing about him in court where he just goes, he has nothing to say. He's not defending himself. He's just going to take the rap and go to jail. Of course, they get this defender guy, this guy nicknamed the Hawk, that is going to, fight. No, I'm sorry. He was the one that was going to get White Tiger, right?
Yeah, he was the prosecutor going after
White
Tiger.
So no, that's right. So back to Bullseye here. I kind of get the feeling that Bullseye is not afraid to spend the rest of his life in jail because he knows he's not going to be there for the rest of his life in jail. And I have a feeling that he either has assurances from Wilson Fisk, that we're going to get you out, we're going to protect you, or we're going to arrange your escape or something. We haven't seen the last of him doing his dirty deeds. And that's what I'm really looking forward to. And I have a feeling that he's going to come back into play sooner than later.
Yeah. For me, these first 2 episodes just brought me right back to that place. Daredevil was my favorite of the Netflix series and wasn't even close. I love, from start to finish, it was the strongest show. Jessica Jones season 1 was phenomenal. Luke Cage was great, but Daredevil, Charlie Cox is Daredevil. I had the pleasure of meeting Charlie Cox at Dragon Con a few years back, and just what an amazing person he was. As far as predictions, obviously this show has a weird release schedule. I think it's the end of March. 2 episodes are together, and I think those are the 2 Punisher episodes. They're releasing on the same day, and I'm really looking forward to that. I want to see more of what happened with Foggy. I want to see more what happens with Matt and how much they do with from the Born Again storyline from the comics compared to into this show. but I'm just so happy to have this show back and with this energy. That's what has me excited. And no matter what direction they take, I think I have full faith in these guys, and I cannot wait for what's going to happen next. So, and we will be covering it completely here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Daredevil Born Again. Lots of spoiler reaction shows ahead, guys, so just be ready. But we're looking very forward to our return to Hell's Kitchen. This has been the True Believers podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network. We want to thank you guys so much out there on YouTube. Chris, Ghostbusters Quick Response. We appreciate you joining in the chat as always.
Yes.
I want to thank my amazing co-hosts here for our firm of Wagner, Reitzel, and Cat. And of course, this is the True Believers on the Fandom Podcast Network. If you've been watching on our YouTube channel, thank you so much. Of course, you can find the Fandom Podcast Network all over your favorite podcast catchers here on YouTube as well. If you are watching on this, please give us a like, a subscribe, and a share. We have all of our amazing Facebook pages as well. You can find us on so many different social medias. And like I said, scan our QR code. You can go right to our audio podcast site and listen to all the great things we do around here. And of course, you can also find the Fandom Podcast Network on Blue Sky. What's the handle on Blue Sky, Kevin?
FanPod Network on Blue Sky.
And of course, too, we have TeePublic, where you can find all the gear of the Fandom Podcast Network. We have our great True Believer shirt up there on this photo right here. We appreciate the support. We get a little bit of kickback from there. It helps us keep the Tesseract powered up because Kevin likes to use it to power his old media devices. How much Laserdisc do you get off of a Tesseract, Kevin?
Oh, a lot of powers.
And also all the great gear. It's just we love it, and we love you guys supporting it as well. Again, this has been True Believers. You can find me, Kyle, on social media over Facebook. You can find me on Twitter at @KyleW. You can find me on Blue Sky at @KyleW. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at @KyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on X, Instagram, Threads, Discord, and Letterboxd at Spartan_Phoenix, and on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix.
Kat, where can people find you out there on the interwebs?
Facebook, Instagram, X, and Blue Sky, all at Static Cat 1.
There we
Don't
go.
forget to check out our True Believers Facebook page. I can't remember if you mentioned that or not yet, Kyle.
Yeah, no, please do. We keep you updated on all the happenings of the MCU there and what else might be going on in other comic book movie related things. So we have a lot of fun there. We are not done with Daredevil Born Again. We are just getting started. We're going to have a lot of fun with this, guys. Again, thank you for joining us for this special live episode on the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. The audio version of this show will be out very soon. Again, what a joy to talk about Daredevil Born Again. And as always, as we close out, two things. Excelsior True Believers and make ours Marvel. Go back, rewatch Daredevil. It's great stuff. We all will be born again. Goodbye, everybody.